The scene is Athens, 400 BC. Bunch of the local brainiacs have gotten together. The wine is being passed, and the ideas are flowing fast and furious. The debate's in full force, and Socrates has the floor.
Hi everyone. I decided to take a look at some of the reviews of Alien Isolation, given that on Friday the embargo was lifted. A couple of these in particular really puzzled me, IGN's review and GameSpot's. I was going to ignore them entirely just because there are plenty of other reviews out there that I can read and enjoy, or watch rather, on YouTube. Plenty of people are reviewing the game on there and seem to like it just fine. So I thought I would, for fun, I would basically look at IGN's review of the game, and I would essentially read it as I'm recording this, and I would sort of, I don't know, critique it or analyze it or basically poke fun at it. I've never really been one to agree with their reviews. A lot of people say that they're bought and paid for, and I mean, any professional critic is probably going to be influenced somewhat by his paycheck, but at the same time, I think that you can't just say, oh, well, you're a professional critic, so you're not capable of having your own opinion. Roger Ebert was a professional critic, and he was more than capable of voicing what he thought, not what someone else thought. I'm not really trying to compare IGN to Roger Ebert, because I don't like them nearly as much as I liked him, but at the same time, let's see what they wrote about Alien Isolation. An eternal terror. Thanks to a slick opening that includes nostalgic narration and busted tracking on the VCR visual effects, the first 5 minutes of Alien Isolation are far and away better than any piece of last year's dreadfully disappointing Colonial Marines. So far, so good. But by the end of the 15 to 20 hours I'd spent with the Man-O-E Xenomorph survival horror show, I wish I'd stopped after the first half dozen. So, I'm not sure what he's saying here. Ryan McCaffrey. Is he trying to tell us that he played the game for 20 hours straight? I mean, in my experience, back in the day, when games were typically harder, if a game was difficult, I would play it over several sessions. I wouldn't just do it all at once, and just because of the nature of the game. I know that with today's generation, most people aren't used to difficult games, so when something like Dark Souls comes out, people are struck dumb by the difficulty, and they don't really know what to do, and most people, or casual gamers anyways, are better off just playing the game in small installments, I think. And that way you're not going to get frustrated with the game, because if you do anything for 20 hours straight, or 10 hours straight, or 8 hours straight, you know, you're going to get burnt out. And especially with something like Alien Isolation, it's even more true, because a lot of the praise that I've heard of the game is that it's scary from start to finish, or rather it's tense from start to finish. You never feel safe. Well, of course this is going to be exhausting. You're going to probably feel like you need to take a break. So I don't think that's the game's fault. It's probably Ryan's fault, or anyone who gets exhausted with the game. Well, that's because it's an exhausting game, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, certain movies are exhausting, but I watch them anyways because they deliver something that most other films don't deliver. And Alien Isolation is actually a very visceral, tactile experience. When you play it, you feel like you're on the Sevastopol, that you are Amanda, that you're surrounded by darkness, that you're constantly under attack. Everything basically wants to kill you. I mean, that's kind of a unique experience. I haven't heard of too many other survival horror games that really get that. In fact, it sounds kind of unique, honestly, because you could say, well, Amnesia, but Amnesia is basically just the tip of the iceberg compared to this game. I mean, this game takes it to a whole new level. It's S-Smart's top of the line, and that's a good thing, that it's exhausting. If it wasn't exhausting and stressful, I'd say, well, it's obviously not doing its job. So I don't really see that as criticism. I imagine at the end of this review they'll probably have it as one of their cons, saying, oh, it's too stressful. It's a horror game. It's supposed to be stressful. Okay, carrying on. Isolation impresses out of the gate not only due to the aforementioned intro, but because its art direction and sound design dutifully nail the vibe of Ridley Scott's original 1979 film. I can't stress this enough. Okay, so this sounds like they're almost kind of understating that. It's like, okay, dutifully nail. Alright, well, why not say they come closer to capturing the look of the universe than any other game to date? Because as far as I'm concerned, and as far as a lot of other people are concerned, that's the case. It's not like, oh, well, they just dutifully did it. You know, oh yeah, they just did their job. No, they went above and beyond the Call of Duty and really hit this out of the park, art direction-wise and sound design-wise. Just like the movie, Alien. You know, it was supposed to be a run-of-the-mill film, but Ridley Scott basically created this really visual world, and everything that I've heard about the game Alien Isolation suggests that they had a similar approach, because most other games, when they have the license, they just kind of you know, let's just put everything in there that people will recognize, but let's not really make it all that great, like Colonial Marines, or, you know, back in the day, something like Alien Trilogy. No, honestly, Alien Trilogy for the PlayStation 1, the technology was much more limited, and honestly, I remember playing that game. I liked it for what it was. I mean, it's not perfect, but it was basically a Doom clone with an alien skin, but it back then it was actually kind of impressive. I mean, there wasn't anything else like it, really. And now there isn't really anything like Alien Isolation, but I can't imagine anyone making another game with such high quality with the art and sound design. It's unparalleled. And this guy's basically saying, well, they just kind of do their jobs. No, you're understating it tremendously. You know, you say, oh, I can't stress this enough. Well, why don't you actually, you know, emphasize that? Okay, so this game's going to get at least, I don't know, an 8.5. Guess I'll find out. Considering this is a survival horror game, it takes a bit longer than expected for the alien to show up and cause trouble. I wrote off not feeling threatened for the first hour, though, because it only seemed to give Isolation time to lay a foundation and setting its tone, premise, and characters. I don't know. Watching the intro and the way that you are introduced to the station, I thought that it was pretty unpleasant. I mean, yeah, okay, it's obvious that things are kind of amiss, but yeah, the alien isn't like waiting for you as soon as you step on the station. But that's not a bad thing, I think. They take their time, like the movie, you know. If they're complaining about that, they are basically saying that they don't like Alien, because Alien the movie takes its time. The creature doesn't even show up in that until over halfway through the film, and it doesn't turn into the xenomorph until after, you know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes after that, after it's born, so to speak. And characters. Amanda is likable and clearly defined, tough as nails personality befitting of her mother. Wow, yeah. Once the xenomorph does start stalking you through the dark and creepy Sevastopol station, Isolation hits its stride. It is an absolutely stressful game to play by design, as opposed to not by design? Maybe they mean like bugs or something like that, because I've definitely played some bad games that have bugs and make me want to stab my eyes out. So the fact that it's stressful by design sounds like, okay, that's a good thing. About 99% of your hunter's movements and actions are unscripted, so you generally never know if it's going to leave you alone for minutes at a time, crawl into the ventilation ducts. The slightest sound, light source, or sight of you will cause a serial murdering life form to charge and kill you.
Well, where the fu-
It's impervious to your weapons, be they a pistol, shotgun, flamethrower, or drafted items. In fact, only the latter three of these can even annoy the alien enough to force it to temporarily leave the area. Well, yeah, it's indestructible. I mean, the weapons are, from what I understand, they're the developers, when they first released the initial demo of the game back in January, said that weapons aren't the focus. This isn't Doom, okay? You don't have a chain gun, you don't have a plasma rifle, you don't have a rocket launcher, you don't have a BFG 9000.
Let's rock!
The weapons are there to prove a point. You know, it's like, okay, we're going to give you a shotgun, but guess what? You're probably not going to want to use it. I think that's an interesting concept, because most shooters, as soon as you get a gun, you're like, okay, I can't wait to shoot something with this. But to have a game, a survival horror game, that defeats that concept and makes you want to actually not use the weapon is kind of clever. I've never actually heard of that in a game. You know, that's kind of an achievement in and of itself.
What do those pulse rifles fire?
10mm explosive tip caseless. Standard light armor piercing round 1.
Well, look where your team is. They're right under the primary heat exchangers.
So?
So, if they fire their weapons in there, won't they rupture the cooling system?
Yeah, she's absolutely right.
So? So what?
Look, this whole station is basically a big fusion reactor.
You know, and I don't know if they're saying that's a bad thing, then basically they're saying, oh, well, I wish I could shoot the gun. Well, why? It's a survival horror game. If you want to shoot a gun, go play Destiny or something like that. People nowadays, they have to play modern games every time they release a new Call of Duty. You have to buy it and play it, or Battlefield, or whatever, you know, and it's always the same shit. So the fact that this game is actually trying to subvert all that nonsense and sort of push you away from the use of weapons to just kill something, but rather use them in a unique and inventive way is a good thing. That's to the game's merit. It's not that it's failing as a shooter, it's that it's succeeding as a survival horror. And more so than, say, something like Resident Evil, which is the first survival horror game. Coined the phrase, welcome to the world of survival horror. And this sounds like it does a better job, because in that game you had guns, you had grenade launchers, you had a fucking flamethrower, and that killed things. Whereas in this, Alien Isolation, the flamethrower is only a deterrent. Nothing really works to the extent that you can just kill the alien. Because if you could kill the alien, it wouldn't be scary. It's indestructible. I remember one of my favorite things, and my brother's favorite things about Dead Space 1 was the indestructible alien. It was fun because you couldn't kill it. It was like trying to solve a puzzle while the puzzle was trying to kill you. It was interesting. It was more interesting to me than the plasma cutter. You know, it's exciting, and I didn't mind the combat in that game, but I liked that invincible monster. And, you know, you're having to try and figure out how to kill it. Or in Resident Evil 4, the creature that was actually a lot like Alien, where there's a big, tall, black monster with a big tail, kind of like the Xenomorph. And you have to figure out how to kill it. I just used the rocket launcher. But imagine trying to do that with something else. You know, it would be very intense. it's more fun if you play by the game's rules instead of just trying to pick up the most powerful weapon you can find and just killing it in one shot. You know, you're missing the point of the game if you do that. Okay, what's next? But as you'll come to learn, the alien's unpredictability is both isolation's greatest strength as well as its most crippling weakness. I'm going to be interested in what he has to say here because I think that's a bunch of bullshit. The typical encounter in isolation goes like this. You get a warning pulse, hear the unsettling sound of the alien sprawling into the area as it drops in from an overhead air duct. You hide in a locker, storage cabinet, or under a desk, stare at your motion tracker until the creature completely leaves the area, and then you proceed as quietly as possible towards your next objective. Well, that's only one approach. You don't have to hide in the locker. You have the crafting system for a reason. To say that every typical encounter in the game from start to finish, it consists of you hiding in a locker and only a locker is not true. I mean, they have a whole system. The hacking system. You can hack the ship to basically take advantage of certain systems, like the sprinkler system, or you can turn the lights on or off, and so on and so forth. I mean, there's more to it than just hiding in a locker. And yeah, okay, you have to be stealthy. Well, it's a stealth-based survival horror, so that kind of comes with the territory, and saying that I think he's oversimplifying it. But during this honeymoon period, isolation effectively keeps the pressure on. Manually activated wall-mounted telephones are the only way to save your progress, which I like personally. I think that's a cool idea. So reaching the next one genuinely feels like a miniature victory unto itself. And getting impaled by the alien before you can pick up the receiver is a dramatic defeat. Ripley's nightmare became my own as isolation moved its goalpost back so many damn times that it was almost comical. First is an oddly extended alien-free stretch midway through that pits you against aggro androids instead of organic terrors. Now, the funny thing about that is they're saying this is a bad thing, whereas just about every other review that I've read or watched says that the androids give the alien a run for its money. They're really creepy, like Michael Myers creepy. Basically, that sort of uncanny valley effect taken to the extreme. They have these mask-like faces that just inspire a different kind of fear than what the alien inspires. It's almost like a contrast, where you have this thing scary, then you have the alien, which is understandably scary too, but they're scary for different reasons. So there's some variety, you know. It's a good thing. Mercifully, the bots can be killed, but not without well-placed headshots of firearms that are cumbersome to reload. Well, that's the point. I mean, Ripley isn't a soldier.
I'm not a soldier.
She's an engineer with a revolver. Watch something like Proof of Life, where the person who's being rescued at the end of the film has a gun and he shoots the bad guy, but he misses like 3 times before he finally hits him. And it's like, that's because he's not a soldier. He doesn't know how to shoot. In Alien Isolation, the shooting is meant to be clumsy. Because if it was easy to shoot, then it wouldn't feel like No Country for Old Men. The dog is running at the hero, and the hero is trying to reload his gun, you know, and he's not able to just do it and shoot it. Like, it takes him a minute. And right as the dog's jumping at him, he reloads and then he fires. It's called tension. You know, and if you could just shoot something without any trouble, then there would be no tension. It would turn into Doom or Quake or something like that. And that's not the kind of game I think CA wanted to make.
Do you know what the most frightening thing in the world is? It's fear.
Clearly. This is not a first-person shooter, though occasionally it pretends to be. I think that's probably not the case. Again, they discourage the use of firearms quite heavily, so I'm not sure why the author thinks that it's pretending to be what it isn't. No, it's not like that at all. They said We have guns in the game. You can use them, but you don't have to. And in fact, you can go through the whole game without killing a single human. I don't know if that's true with the androids, but there's a lot of different ways you can kill the androids. You don't just have to shoot them with a pistol. There are other ways to deal with them. And in fact, if you don't interfere with their directives, they'll leave you alone. So again, it's all about options. It's not like you're forced to use these clunky, ineffective weapons. They're there if you want to use them, but it's like a last resort. It's like, well, I don't have any other choice. Or I want to try it, but it's a bad idea. You know, I like that they gave you the option. You know, it's a risk-reward kind of thing. I strongly believe that isolation was ending on at least 2 separate occasions, with the second of those times even seeing the resolution of Ripley's original motivation to get some sort of lead or closure on her missing mother. It turned out I wasn't even close. I had another few hours to go, but now without seeing any real reason behind it, except, you know, survival. You know, hey, let's get off the station. You know, that's good enough reason for me. You know, the reason I'm playing the game isn't just to find out what happened to Ripley, because I know what happened to Ripley.
What happened was you had drifted right through the core systems, and it's really just blind luck that a deep salvage team found you when they did. It's 1 in 1,000, really.
Right off the get-go, she's in hypersleep, in the narcissist, floating out past the core systems. She's going to be floating for another 32 years before she gets picked up with the deep salvage team. And then she gets taken back to Gateway Station. And then aliens will happen. And by that point, Amanda will be dead.
Amanda Ripley McLaren, married name, I guess, age 66. And that was at the time of her death, which was 2 years ago.
So, you know, you're playing it for the adventure on the station. That's why I'm playing it. I'm playing it because the game's basically a simulation of Alien, the movie. You know, that's why I want to play it. Just to be in that world, you know, that's the reason I'm playing it, because I'm such a fan of the movie. I think, to me, it's a dream come true to be able to experience that. And clearly this guy isn't anywhere near as enthusiastic about that because, well, your objective is a final sounding escape the station for a good 8 hours or so, but with so many errands to do along the way, again, surviving. You're on a station that's falling apart, so it's not like you can just walk from point A to point B. It's difficult. It's tedious. It's about survival, remember? It's not supposed to be easy or straightforward. It's ostensibly straightforward, but it's not as simple as it sounds. And I like that.
I dig it, man.
You know, if it was as simple as it sounds, I really would hate it. But it's not. It doesn't try to be like that. Not to mention incessant and irritating backtracking across the entire ship. Well, I mean, it's only irritating if you don't like that sort of thing. But there are areas that you can't access at the start of the game that you can access later once you've updated your security and you have different tools. Sounds kind of like Metroid. Well, I like Metroid. I like backtracking. And it will be interesting to see if people can turn it into a speedrun based game. How quickly can you beat Alien Isolation? And with all the backtracking and knowing all the areas, knowing the ship from inside and out. Huge ship, right? All these different areas you can go. You can go in the air ducts. It's not always a good idea, but there are all these different ways that you can go. Secret items, who knows, all the Easter eggs that they have. That's good. That's a good thing. Oh, it's frustrating pit of repetition. So's Tetris. So's Mario. So's Mega Man. You know, it's you kill one robot master, then you go to the next. Now, if you play it on easy, you can beat it quicker, but you're going to lose some of the danger. The developers have said, and the people that have played the preview said that they prefer it on hard. Because the whole reason you're playing the game is to be horrified, to feel that unpleasant feeling of being hunted by something that's basically indestructible. Yeah, you know, it's a gamey game. It has some obvious game mechanics in it. Outlast did too. But plenty of games have obvious game mechanics. Gears of War had obvious game mechanics. Team Fortress 2 had obvious game mechanics. So what? The IGN reviewer's article. So far, I'm not very impressed with it. He's complaining because the game, instead of throwing a new twist at you, is basically taking the old twists and it basically combines them. So instead of just having humans or androids or extraterrestrials one at a time, it throws all three of them at you simultaneously. I guess his complaint is that it's too hard, or that it would be nice just to have a completely new approach. And from a certain point of view, I get that, But at the same time, you do have to kind of stick with what you have established, So you establish in Mario that you jump and you pick up mushrooms to get one-ups. So you want to just, halfway through the game, change the way that works. Like, you want to just stop jumping and instead have Mario do a handstand and walk on his hands for the rest of the game. I mean, it's just, you don't have to do that. You can stick to the ground rules that you've laid at the start of the game. And I'm not sure why he's criticizing this. His approach was to hide in a locker and stare at his motion tracker. Well, of course that's not going to be fun, but that's not the game's fault. That's his approach. And everyone reacts to the game differently. They are either bothered by it or they're not. And their approaches to the game are different. And a lot of them basically fall into two different categories. They hide, they're stealthy, or they're gung-ho. And, there's some gray area. But the idea is that a lot of people like that. So why do they like it, and why does this guy not like it? And he seems to be complaining about the fact that the game throws too much at you. Honestly, I think, what would Space Invaders be if it only threw one little invader at you? Well, you wouldn't feel like you were scrambling to shoot that invader down. There would be no tension. It's one thing, okay, if the game just kind of steadily sends humans or androids or extraterrestrial foes and you can deal with them one at a time. Well, of course it's going to be easier, but the tension and the panic that results from being overwhelmed, which I think is what the game is trying to achieve, results from having to deal with more than one type of foe simultaneously. That's a good thing. The game is testing your limits. And that shouldn't be viewed as a negative, but this guy, for whatever reason, is. Okay, so basically, fright dissolved into frustration as he got killed from behind for the upteenth time. Yes, you can get killed from behind. You want to have eyes in the back of your head.
Maybe they don't show up on infrared at all.
He said, I got killed, crouched motionless and out of sight in an air duct. Well, I think that's funny because Captain Dallas in Alien was motionless and out of sight in an air duct, right? Safe. So, nothing that could go wrong there, right? And the idea that this guy is surprised because he thought he was safe is funny because he missed one of the main points of the game, which is that you're not safe anywhere. There's very little in the way of rest and relaxation because this isn't some type of vacation that you're going on, unless it's a vacation to hell.
We're on express elevator to hell, going down.
It's meant to be dangerous from start to finish. And I do think that there are points in the game where you're not being attacked, where you can take a breather. And honestly, even if there wasn't those, or they were few and far between, like an oasis in a desert, you could very easily take a break from the game. Dark Souls, for instance, is a very hard game. And I remember playing that game. And I would get frustrated because it was hard.
Fuck! Fuck! Fuck!
Well, I wouldn't say, dear game developers, you should have done the game differently. No, I'm not going to put them on trial for making the game they wanted to make. Instead, I would just be an adult and take a break from the game. And then I would come back refreshed a day or two later, pick up where I left off, and have a good time. So, if a game feels too difficult or hard, you just need to realize that all you have to do is step back, step away from it, it's okay, and then pick up where you left off, and everything will be fine. But it sounds like this guy just tried to force his way through it, and honestly, he's a professional critic, so he's expected to review these things in a timely fashion. He has a deadline that he has to make. But if that's the case, he could have just played it on easy, especially if he's the type of person who doesn't realize that all you have to do is step back, step away from it, it's okay, and then pick up where you left off. So far, his complaints seem to be of someone who just really is an inexperienced novice. And on that principle alone, they should be ignored. As a footnote, Isolation offers a leaderboard-based survival mode, but after checking the marathon, I don't even want to look at it. I did, though, to be able to tell you for sure that it wasn't worth it. Now, again, this is the opinion of someone who is basically stressed out by the game. So, if someone is hysterical and they're trying to give you advice on something, you should probably wait until they've calmed down before listening to them. Because they're not really going to be in the right state of mind to prescribe anything. And he says, I did, though, to be able to tell you for sure that it wasn't worth it. I think that is a bunch of bullshit, because I've heard from many other people that even though it's different from the campaign survival mode, that is, offers a different but enjoyable approach to the game. Almost the polar opposite, in fact. And I've heard plenty of people praise it, say, this is nice. If you like the campaign, but it's not exactly your cup of tea, or you wish things were, a little bit more immediate, then survival mode is going to be right up your alley, because it just gets straight to the point. So, it sounds like, again, the fact that it's not worth it is just this guy's opinion. So I'm not really surprised that he said that. I think maybe he probably could have waited, a day or two to kind of calm down and recollect his thoughts before jumping to conclusions, but it sounds like this entire review was written in one go, just like his playthrough. The verdict. Alien Isolation seemed like the perfect Alien game on paper, and for the first handful of hours it even seems to deliver on its promise, on the strength of its outstanding art and sound, that faithfully recreates the ambience of the classic horror film. I feel as though he should add, by the way, no game has ever come close to doing this, and this is an achievement in and of itself, and the game should receive high marks just for doing this. But he doesn't say that. That's what I would have said. Instead, what was the great xenomorphic hope ends in another disappointment for a license loaded with entertainment potential. Now, entertainment potential is something that he's referring to, and he obviously doesn't seem to think that this game is entertaining. Again, the idea of entertainment is in the eye of the beholder. So if he doesn't think so, you need only turn to most other reviewers of the game, especially on YouTube, and you will discover that they do think that it's tremendously entertaining. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna find a review for the game right now, and I will read it or watch it. So just bear with me a second here. Alien Isolation Review. Okay. God is a geek.
What do you want to do with the rest of your life?
Skip the ads. I hate ads on YouTube. It's so stupid. Okay. Now let's see what they said about the game. We'll skip to the end of the video here.
Comfortably the best alien game ever made, and delivers authenticity along with a new story that is worth...
It is comfortably the best alien game ever made, according to Adam for God is a Geek and his YouTube review of the game. It is comfortably the best alien game ever made.
Seeing, experiencing, and fleeing from into the darkness, Creative Assembly have done it. They have actually done it.
They have done it. Creative Assembly have done it. In case you can't hear the audio in the background. So this review, the tone of the review is totally different. This person actually enjoys the game and appreciates it for what it is, whereas the reviewer for IGN clearly does not. Alright, so going back to the article on IGN, it's a shame that Isolation doesn't track stats, because I'd be curious to know how many of its 15 to 20 hours is spent hiding in lockers. Again, that's your fault, not the game's. There are other approaches that you can take, and the game gives you a plethora of approaches. And the fact that, like a drowning person clinging to dry land, you clung to the lockers as soon as you came across them. That's just your response. But it doesn't make it the right one. And clearly it wasn't, because you didn't have any fun playing the game at all. Someday someone is going to make an incredible alien video game that checks every box. Okay. I've read probably 10 other reviews that say, Creative Assembly have done it. This is the alien game. It's awesome. According to this guy, it's not. But according to all these other guys, it is. So, majority rules. You know, you get extra point for actually having a sound argument and not coming across as someone who doesn't enjoy what they're talking about. And that's kind of how I want to finish this video, is saying that I don't think they had the right person review the game. It sounds like they just picked someone out of a hat. You know, it's like, okay, come on, draw straws. Well, I'm not for drawing any damn straws. I'm for reviewing the game right now correctly. And honestly, I think the wrong person drew the shortest straw, because it's like, for the longest straw, because I think this should actually be considered a fun activity, a desirable activity. But, you know, he doesn't care about the game, and he clearly doesn't play survival horror games, because if he did, he would have mentioned them in the article. You'll notice that he doesn't do that. He doesn't say, oh, well, this reminds me of when I was playing Resident Evil 4, or this reminds me of when I was playing Outlast. He doesn't do that once. In fact, it almost seems like he would have rather had the game be a shooter. So they have someone who isn't a fan of the Alien universe, because if they were, his review would be much more positive, trust me. Someone who doesn't play survival horror games, but rather it seems to enjoy shooters. He is really the wrong person for the job, and I'm not going to care about his opinion any more than I would care about Arnold Schwarzenegger reviewing Sense and Sensibility. Those aren't really my cups of tea to begin with, but the idea is that Arnold Schwarzenegger isn't going to have an interesting opinion on those things because he doesn't care about them. And if he doesn't care about them, I'm not going to care about him and what he has to say. Just like I don't care about this guy and what he has to say because he doesn't care about the alien universe. He doesn't care about survival horror because if he did, his approach or what he said would be completely different than what he did say. You could skip everything else that I said and just look at this one fact. They picked the wrong guy to review the game. You know, they picked someone who doesn't care. And that's the biggest mistake that they made, I think. Okay. Closing statements out of the way. The score, 5.9. That's utterly ridiculous. 5.9 is... traditionally, I always assumed that was the type of score that was reserved for games that couldn't even get the graphics or the sound right. It's ridiculous. Not only that, but I mean, the game offers a lot. Yeah, it might be overlong, but okay, so just shave a couple points off, but don't drop it down at a failing score. That doesn't make any sense. It erases the memory of Colonial Marines, but it's still not the great alien game we were hoping for. Basically, every other preview that I've read or watched says otherwise, so that's a load of bullshit right there. Stellar presentation, generally unnerving. Now, you must note that the stellar presentation is stellar with a capital S. Like, it really is amazing, so it's beyond stellar. It's in a league all of its own. It is unprecedented in terms of quality, so I feel like you should really stress that when next to a little plus sign that you have. But he doesn't. He just like, oh, well, it's stellar. Okay. Genuinely unnerving. Give me another game that feels genuinely unnerving in the same way that Alien Isolation does. And I guarantee that you will not be able to come up with a game, because this is a one-of-a-kind feature. It really is, where it's scary from start to finish. Where it's scary at the start of the game, and it's scary 15 hours in the same sense that you feel like you're constantly under attack, that you can't get comfortable. And no other game that I've ever heard of does that intentionally, anyways. So, I feel like based off those two pros alone, the game should receive a higher score. But, according to him, the alien AI is frustrating, which I find amusing. What would be frustrating in my book is if the AI were stupid. If the alien just stood there and didn't do anything. It does its job. It kills you. It hunts you. So the AI is successful. But according to this guy, it's not fun. Well, any survival horror fan worth his salt is going to be tickled pink by the fact that the alien is actually a hunter. Loses the fear. Well, if you look at the alien long enough, yes, the marvel of first seeing it is going to go away because you have to study it. But it turns into something else. And that tension certainly never goes away. So I feel like that's kind of... it needs to be more specific with that. Poor pacing. That really depends on your point of view. And define pacing, because, again, I've heard other people say that the game is brilliantly paced, or it's paced in an old-school manner. Honestly, in my opinion, I haven't played the game yet, but it sounds kind of like the first Half-Life. You know, it's a long game. It takes its time. And just when you think the game's over, it keeps going. I like that, you know? I don't think a game should just end when you think it's going to end. The game has a mind of its own, and I respect that. So yeah, that's basically it with this review. It's complete and utter nonsense. In a nutshell, if it were a piece of paper, I would wipe my ass with it. It's just that bad. It would be much more forgivable if it had been from someone who actually cared about the series, but as far as I can tell, this person does not. If he did, I'm sure that the score would be more like a 7 or an 8, even if he hated everything else about the game. He would fall in love with the presentation and the unnerving feeling that it conveys so well. Alas, that is not the case. I probably won't do a video like this for GameSpot's review, just because, I don't know, it sounds like they're both cut from the same tree, and I would rather not subject myself to that type of idiocy twice. Once is enough. But I think you get the point. I'll probably do more of these videos, and I'm definitely going to be reviewing the game when it comes out. But in the meantime, I just want to say thank you for watching this, if you did watch the whole thing. And until next time.
These proceedings are closed.